So good afternoon, and I would like to welcome everybody for being here. I would like to first give you some quick tech instructions. All attendees are in listen-only mode. Please submit questions or comments in the Q&A section. The ASL interpreters are here and available for pinning. The captioning is available at the bottom of the Zoom webinar. Please enter CC for the below captioning and to listen in the live video transcript. I would like to open this presentation right now with an opening prayer. So please take this away.
My name is Daryl Felipe. I come to you from Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico. And so I greeted you all in our native language, which is called Parisian. And if everyone would bow their heads as I give blessings and call upon the Creator and the ones that have gone before us for knowledge and helping us in what we need to accomplish today. So if everyone would bow their heads. These are side things. That the new demonstration that they had much deal. That they have they had Nixon group over. That they had the Tony group over these side things. So that the sleep time. So next year there. They are used the Umat Newa. That's the kind school number that the Ian Kai can say. Thoughts are 10 they after bigger. Finally, to see hope by the nuclear to dear Martin, good, so Yak Uchin, to track on SCSS, that's in the doctor, that's it there. Blessings to you all.
Mute it.
At this time, I would like to offer Delner Franklin Thomas, who is the acting director of the Office of Federal Programs, EEOC. Delner.
Good afternoon. My name is Delner Franklin Thomas. I am the acting director of the EEOC's Office of Field Programs. On behalf of myself and Cheryl Mabry, the director of our state, local, and tribal programs, humble greetings to tribal elders and leaders who have joined us today. Also, greetings to all of our Terrell partners, esteemed tribal organizations, individual tribal members, and students. Hearty greetings to colleagues and partners from other federal, state, and local agencies, as well as EEOC leadership and other colleagues who have joined today. We are very grateful and delighted to have you join with us. Today, I have the distinct honor of introducing the chair of the EEOC, the Honorable Charlotte Burrows. Although her accomplishments are too numerous to list, I will point out that before being designated by President Biden as chair of the EEOC in January of 2021, Charlotte Burrows served as an EEOC commissioner for 6 years. Prior to her appointment to the EEOC, Chair Burrows served in several leadership roles at the U.S. Department of Justice, including working with the DOJ Office of Tribal Justice, and she held other prominent positions on Capitol Hill. While at DOJ, she frequently visited tribal lands and worked in the interest of tribes as part of her work. During her tenure at the EEOC, Chair Burrows has supported and championed the EEOC's partnership with Terrells and tribes in general. To name a few things She led the effort to change the name of our former state and local department to state, local, and tribal programs. She has been a keynote speaker at the Council for Tribal Employment Rights National Conventions several times, and under her leadership, the EEOC engaged in our first tribal consultation with tribal leaders. Please join me this afternoon in welcoming the distinguished chair of the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Charlotte A. Burrows. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good morning for some of you who are joining us in the western part of the country. And it is so wonderful to join you. I thank you, Delner, for that really generous introduction. And I am so excited to be here today and honored to welcome you to this event on breaking employment barriers as we address equal opportunity for Native Americans and particularly Native American students. Our discussion today is both important and timely. This is such an important time for civil rights. Among other things, the pandemic and those calls for racial justice after the murder of George Floyd, as well as other acts of racially motivated violence, have really amplified and shined a light on the socioeconomic and racial inequalities in our country. And those were apparent in many communities of color and rural communities, but in particular in Indian country. At the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC, we are doing our part to help address these inequalities by working to advance job opportunities and civil rights in workplaces across the nation. We are the primary federal agency charged with enforcing laws against discrimination in employment based on race, national origin, color, sex, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, and gender identity, religion, disability, age, and genetic information. We also enforce laws that make it illegal to retaliate against any job applicant, employee, or former employee for exercising protections against such discrimination. Although America has made real strides to advance equal opportunity since this agency was founded, we know that discrimination still persists in our society and that our work to ensure equality and justice for all is not done. And Indian country understands that all too well too. And as we work towards that broader goal of equal opportunity for all, we remember that because of the historical experiences of Native Americans in conjunction with the American Indian movement of the 1960s, tribal colleges and universities were founded. And Native Americans desired to reclaim their cultural heritage and preserve their languages and traditions, while also exercising self-determination and self-governance, led to the establishment in 1968 of the first tribally controlled college, the Navajo Community College, now known as Diné College. Today, more than 30 accredited tribal colleges and universities, or TCUs, are owned and operated by Native American tribes on or near tribal lands. And these tribal colleges and universities' commitment to improving the educational, social, and economic development of tribal nations while preserving and honoring tribal cultures is absolutely critical to the advancement of Native Americans. We thought it was also very important to our work in advancing equal opportunity for Native Americans. And so today you will hear from our invited guests about the importance of TCUs and the transformational opportunities that they create for its students and by extension, their families. You'll also hear about the impact that education can have in one's life and job opportunities. This discussion is so timely because, especially in the light of the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure investment and jobs act, as well as the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, there's a new and direct federal investment in families and infrastructure in Indian country. And these financial investments will create job opportunities for tribal members and financially stimulate both the broader economy and tribal economies. And you may be asking, well, where does EEOC fit into this discussion? I'm here to tell you that we fit in because we want to be absolutely sure you know that we are vigilant in ensuring that as those job opportunities open up, we will make sure they open up for everyone. We are working to make sure that discrimination is not a barrier, as it has been in the past, as those new jobs are created. The EEOC investigates charges of employment discrimination that are filed by applicants and employees against private employers, state and federal government, unions, and employment agencies. And if we find evidence of discrimination, our legal unit may file a lawsuit against the employer to obtain monetary compensation for the victims and ensure that the employer has policies in place to prevent discrimination in the future. So I am really pleased to say that each and every year, the EEOC returns more money to the American workers who have suffered discrimination than the amount of our annual budget. So last year, it was over $500 million that we were able to return to workers who had suffered discrimination. And while the EEOC generally lacks jurisdiction over tribes, so we don't investigate tribal employers, we do have the ability to protect tribal employees, and any non-tribal employer with 15 or more employees is subject to our jurisdiction and our laws. So even if that non-tribal employer is operating on tribal lands, they have to abide by these non-discrimination laws. It's critical for employees to understand their rights. And if they experience harassment or discrimination, to know how to reach us. The last thing I'll say about our work is that one of our top priorities has been combating workplace harassment, which remains a serious problem, including in the construction area. So together with our partners at DOL, we are working very hard to make sure that those opportunities open up, but also that if there is harassment, we are there to address it. So we've seen that people of color, women, often are not welcomed, but that is changing, and we are going to work to try to change it. Overall, construction has long been a pathway to the middle class, and we want to make sure it's open to everyone, regardless of background, including tribal members. We are also looking overall at how we can make sure that folks know how to find us if they need us. So in addition to receiving settlements and bringing lawsuits or investigating job discrimination, such as in the instance last year, we were able to get $1.75 million in a settlement for 16 workers who were, including some Native American workers who were building oil pipelines. And in that case, they suffered egregious harassment, but we were able to resolve it. And we are also working through our Youth at Work initiative to make sure that even new workers and the youngest workers who are just entering their first jobs know their rights. And so we wanted to make sure that you know that our staff is talking to employers, to schools, and other organizations to provide information about workplace civil rights laws and encourage employers to proactively address discrimination issues confronting young workers. So before I conclude, I want to say that we welcome a partnership with the tribal colleges and universities to talk to Native American youth about their employment rights and empower them to assert those rights. Our staff is conducting training and events to inform the public what to do if they or someone they know is experiencing discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. We welcome your recommendations about how to best support tribal students in the workplace. And we encourage you to contact us if you ever think you or someone you know has experienced unlawful harassment, retaliation, or other forms of discrimination, including needing a workplace accommodation for a disability or for religious discrimination. So you can go to our website at www.eeoc.gov. And there you'll find our 1-800 number, as well as a public portal to speak to someone or file a complaint regarding discrimination. And civil rights remain America's unfinished business. And as our nation recovers from the pandemic, there will be many opportunities to advance civil rights. At the EEOC, we want to make sure we seize those opportunities and we help you do the same. We're committed to the kind of change that will make a reality our shared vision for all American Indians and Alaska Natives to thrive and prosper through economic opportunity and to be treated with dignity and respect in the workplace. We hope you'll find today's discussion informative and compelling. Thank you so very much. And I am now delighted to turn it over to James Yao, the Deputy Director for the State, Local, and Tribal Program of the EEOC, who will introduce our distinguished panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Burrows. It is always so great to hear from you. Thank you for your important message and telling our audience about the EEOC's work and efforts. Thank you so much again. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm James Yao, Deputy Director of State, Local, and Tribal Programs here with the EEOC. I am delighted to be here with you all today, and I will be facilitating our panel discussion. The chair provided you with a wealth of information about the EEOC, so I think we can move on to our panel discussion. And today you'll be hearing from an excellent panel. Joining us today is Carrie Billy, President of the American Indian Higher Education Consortium. Also from the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, my apologies, is Erica Moore, the Executive Director of Native Student Success. And also on our panel today is Julian Guerrero, Director of the Office of Indian Education at the United States Department of Education. So the format of our panel discussion will be for each panelist to take turns in providing their initial remarks. Following their remarks, I will then proceed to ask questions to our panelists. And we have also enabled the question and answer or Q&A feature, and you all in the audience may submit your questions and we will try to get to your questions before the conclusion of our panel today. So to begin, I'd like to first ask Carrie Billy, the President of AHEC, to start. Carrie, if you're ready, let's turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, James. Yate Belladonna Nishni Oni Bashashen Taba'a Dashashek Ani Dashanali. I am Carrie Billy, the President and CEO of AHEC, which is the Tribal Colleges and Universities. And I'd like to start just by briefly honoring and acknowledging the first people of the land on which I am standing right now near Washington, D.C., the Nacotchtank, Piscataway, and other Algonquin speaking tribes whose land once ranged up and down the East Coast before being nearly, but not vanquished. I hope all that we discuss today and do honors their legacy and their future on this land. I always like to start with a land acknowledgement because it reminds me of our creation stories and our place. As Indigenous people, we all have creation stories that explain our emergence from a sacred place, from the land, water, or sky. And though our stories vary from tribe to tribe, we are people of this place, this land, and that is tremendously important to us. And I think it's important for employers to keep in mind. So as you may know, there are 574 federally recognized Indian tribes in the US, and tribal colleges serve about 80% of what's left of Indian country today. And I want to thank Chair Burrows for her great words about the tribal colleges and kind of explaining what they are and how long they have existed. I always say that tribal colleges emerged onto the US higher education landscape beginning, as Chair Burrows said, in the late 1960s. And I say emerged intentionally because it signifies the place-based nature of tribal colleges. Tribal colleges emerged nurtured by and in turn nurturing the land, languages, cultures, and distinct people who created them. We've grown from one institution to 35 accredited tribal colleges operating more than 90 sites in 15 states. Tribal colleges were established for two reasons: to preserve and promote our culture and language, and second, to create economic opportunity, strengthen sovereignty, and rebuild and sustain our tribal nations. The issues we are focusing on today are rooted in both purposes. A key goal of every tribal college is to prepare Native students for lifelong careers that will help sustain families, strengthen identity, and help our tribal nations flourish economically and socially, as Chair Burrows said, to thrive and prosper with dignity and respect. So how do tribal colleges do this? First, as I've said, tribal colleges are place-based institutions serving their local tribal nation. As place-based institutions committed to nation building, tribal colleges offer certificate and degree programs in nearly every subject or field needed to sustain and rebuild a tribal nation. Education, environmental science, allied health fields, business, entrepreneurship, engineering, native language revitalization, STEM, social work, on and on. In total, tribal colleges offer nearly 930 associate degrees, so associate and bachelor's degrees. All 35 of the tribal colleges offer associate and those kind of workforce development degrees that Chair Burrows was talking about. 19 tribal colleges offer 4-year degrees, 8 have master's degree programs, and 1 tribal college will be launching the first tribal college PhD program ever this fall. So pretty exciting. But even though they have a lot of degree programs, tribal colleges are small. They average between 100 and about 2,000 full-time in-person students every year, but tribal colleges serve many thousands more every year in community-based programs. The majority of first-time students are between the ages of 16 and 24, so typical college student age, and they are single. But at many tribal colleges, the typical student is a single mother in her late 20s or early 30s. Tribal colleges meet students wherever they are in the education spectrum, providing holistic wraparound services to students to support them as they work to achieve their goals. Culture is the core of the curriculum, and culture, language, and community and tribal values and practices support all of our students. Tribal colleges also focus on workforce and career skill building activities like internships, apprenticeship programs, life and workforce skills, and research programs that are relevant to the community. Data shows these strategies are paying off. For example, in a study of employer satisfaction completed by Lakota Ojibwe University, employers in the LCO nursing program had a 100% employer satisfaction rate, with 96% of the graduates being placed locally. But we know many of our students face serious challenges seeking employment and once they become employed. In and near many of our communities, racism and lack of understanding or knowledge gaps are real. So I'm going to turn it over right now to AHEC's Executive Director of Native Student Success, Dr. Erica Moore, who's going to talk a little bit more about the challenges some of our students face when seeking and securing employment. So Erica?
Carrie, Taigwe, everyone. I'm Erica, and I'm going to just touch on some of the experiences that our students have faced. But first, I want to just shout out to all those individuals that have experienced discrimination that was discussed, that they received retribution after the fact. So often justice is seen after the trauma of discrimination, but I'm so happy to hear that they are experiencing some consequences. So as Carrie mentioned briefly, our TCUs, our tribal colleges and universities, are oftentimes in very isolated areas. So career placement for our TCUs can be difficult if we have to extend outside of the tribal communities. And I say that because most of the discrimination our students are facing are in those towns closest to those tribal communities. So I've had students report that, many times that they don't even want to apply to the jobs in those locations because just as community members going into those communities, they face the othering and racial discrimination. And so they're afraid to apply in the first place. And then they've experienced when they attempt to apply that they're told, even though they know that there are signs and have been directed to apply, once the places of employment find out that they are American Indian, Alaska Native students, they say they are no longer hiring. We've also seen in the interview process very restrictive questioning regarding, do you have vehicles or childcare? And in a way that they've already placed those individuals to feel defensive, that they're assuming that they don't have the vehicle or the childcare, but also many of our students do not have access to the vehicles or childcare. and those places of employment are restricting those applicants by not providing any resources. So just having the application available can provide equality, but not providing the resources for all individuals applying to that job does not provide equity. So our students are often out of the running for those jobs right away when they're asked about those pieces of information, and then obviously not wanting to apply because they know that they're othered or they will experience racial discrimination. But once they're hired, they also experience lower pay than their coworkers. Oftentimes, it's more difficult for them to take leave because the Federal Leave Act is very restrictive on whom is considered a relevant family member to take leave for when they pass. Many of us in our tribal communities experience familial connections much different. And so if an auntie who raised us passed and we need to take leave, many times it's not approved because of that restriction. Many times our students have wanted to take off work to attend a ceremony during the summer months. They're accused of just trying to take off to have fun during the summer. They're not believed. They're not given the leave. It's unpaid leave. Even when they have annual leave available to take, they've experienced and reported that they've received racial discrimination with racial language used, and when they report, often there's no consequences. When it is a workplace on campus, a mainstream institution, they've tried to go through Title IX, EEOC, and so many times. They're not heard, they're not believed, and they're considered inactionable. So then our students no longer want to actually file a complaint. They're often targeted after, even though the process is supposed to be anonymous. So they have obviously the isolation issue, the lack of transportation to get to the places of employment outside of the tribal community. They are not receiving applications or being hired at the same rates. Once they are hired, they're experiencing the othering, the racial discrimination through the language use, lack of the reporting or consequence of the reporting. So they lose faith in the system itself. One semester I remembered, they were so fed up that they asked to do their own experiment. And we went into a town that's very local to the tribal community. And we had a group of us, some of us presenting, having unearned privilege of not presenting as a phenotypically Indigenous person. And we split up into groups and went into the places of employment. And every single time, and this is anecdotal just because it's just our one semester in that group of students, every single time those of us who had the unearned privilege would go in, ask for applications, and they would hand them to us. If our relatives that were phenotypically Indigenous looking would go in, they would say, we are no longer hiring. We did this with several other places just to see if we could get hotel rooms, walk through stores without being followed behind. And every time our students felt that they were treated unfairly. And so how do you express and share those thoughts when the people that are supposed to be listening, they feel aren't being responsive to their concerns. And so they end up not applying at all, not wanting to engage with those negative experiences. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Carrie and Erica. I'm going to get back to you with follow-up questions because you've provided a wealth of information. Really, really important that we talk more about that. But before we do that, I'd like to give our next panelist, Julian Guerrero, a chance to provide his remarks. Julian, please take it away.
Thank you so much, James. Appreciate that. Good afternoon. And just real briefly in my own native language as well. Ha maraoeka. Nananiatsa yani suara moatsi. So kanina nakimar Washington ka nakanikata. Na namanatsa kurchina dasa kozana dasa coffeena dasa ahirina. And the English translation is simply, hello everyone. My name is Julian Guerrero. I'm spiritually coming from Lawton, Oklahoma, known as the place of many houses, but physically I am joining you from Washington, D.C. And my families are the Kirchi, Kozad, Coffee, and Ahadi families. And I'm Comanche and Kiowa, and I have the distinct pleasure, and I'm very grateful to serve as the director of the Office of Indian Education here at the U.S. Department of Education within the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and really ecstatic to join amongst my colleague panelists as well around such an important topic, a very persistent issue and topic. It's really the issues facing our tribal students related to employment discrimination, hiring, and other issues. And this all culminates and leads back to something that we all know deep down, is that we know that Native children learn best when they trust the educators that surround them. And we know that Native children trust best when the educators around them represent their backgrounds, represent their cultural and traditional ways of knowing. And ultimately, educators are most effective when they have culturally responsive competencies and skills that lift up the individual educational journey of every Native child, no matter where they're starting. For every single American Indian, Alaskan Native, and Native Hawaiian student, this is a tall charge, a tall order for us all to meet. But as the director of OIE, I'm excited in what we can accomplish, what we can not only dream about, but work towards in our effort to address important topics like these. And just to give you a little bit of the landscape of what the Office of Indian Education provides is, at large, we are a grant-making office. We provide both formula and discretionary grant opportunities across the United States. Ultimately, our grant-making year ranges from having anywhere from about 1,550 grantees to maybe 1,800 grantees any given year. Again, this is a mixture of formula grants and discretionary competitive grants. On average, annually, 1,300 of those are formula grantees. The most important thing and how our work relates to the topic at large is that we do use the ISDEAA as a requirement for all of our grantees. So this means that statutorily, Indian preference does apply to any of our grantees. And we're always happy to provide technical assistance around this work. And just to give you a sense of the type of grants that we give out, these can range from, early childhood education to K-12 programs to post-secondary higher education programs. Specifically, when we think about workforce development, we have some new and exciting programs that we're going to be running this year around Native American teacher retention, as well as another program which is longstanding for us, but is around what we call the Indian Education Professional Development Program, the recruitment and retention and training of Native teachers, administrators, and support auxiliary staff. One of the main things that really kind of helps me have more confidence in the work that we do in the OIE is knowing that we primarily benefit Natives in every subject area. We use, again, like I had mentioned, the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, the ISDEAA. Specifically, we use the ISDEAA to the greatest extent feasible when a grantee must give Indians preference and opportunities for training and employment in connection with the administration of the grant they're receiving, as well as giving Indian organizations and Indian-owned economic enterprises as defined in the Indian Financing Act of 1974, preference in awards of contracts in connection to the administration of the grant that they receive. And for the purposes of these programs, we do define Indian as a member of any federally recognized tribe. The important thing to note is that our ISDEA responsibilities that we place on our grantees, we don't do it alone. We do it in partnership with many stakeholders, local education agencies, state education agencies, the grantees themselves. And one of the main things that we drive home is, again, our Native children learn best when they trust the educators that surround them. And what better way to equip their learning journey than to make sure that the professionals who are supporting them are coming from cultural backgrounds and have competencies that really complement their needs on an individual level. So I'm excited about the panel discussions to come. I'm happy to be here. Back to you, James.
Great, thank you so much, Julian. So now that we've heard from each of our panelists, next we're going to move on to our question and answers with our panel. So folks out in the audience, please feel free to submit your questions into Q&A. So we'll be checking those questions throughout the discussion. But first, actually, I'd like to ask a follow-up question to Erica about the information you provided about the othering and the racial discrimination and how folks are afraid to apply. I was wondering if you could paint a little bit broader picture about what you were describing. And I was just wondering, were there any particular industries where you were seeing that, or is that just pretty much broad-based?
Yeah, I would probably hate to generalize, of course. And where I am, I'm in South Dakota, so we were in towns that were local to the tribal communities here. So of course, I can't speak to an experience outside of this area, but we do hear so many similar reports from all of our students across the tribal communities. So what they experience going into the towns closest to the tribal communities is an everyday, it impacts all aspects of their life. What we're talking about today is how it'll impact their decision to apply to a job. And so going into one of those towns where they know just going shopping, they're going to be harassed, racially profiled. Those towns are pulling them over at higher rates, racial profiling while driving. And so oftentimes just going into those communities are really frightening for our students, no matter their age. Even if our students are older and non-traditional aged students, they're experiencing similar experiences. So not wanting to go into those communities is already a barrier when they're the closest towns that have employment, because we do see so many restrictions on career placement within the tribal communities for many reasons. And so they don't want to apply. And then when they do, and they feel that that they are not going to be hired at the same rate, or if their names, if they have traditional names, they're not even called back. And many times they'll go back and switch the name, and then they'll get an interview. So sometimes we've had a student say they've applied, they said they called over the phone, asked for an application, they are hiring, they walked in and they told them they're no longer hiring as soon as they saw that they were a Native student, Native individual. So there's many, I think, nuanced pieces that go into what prevents them from even applying. But also remember, word of mouth is huge in Indian country. So if you're experiencing racial discrimination at those local places of employment, you're sending that back into the tribal communities as well. And then, well, I'm not going to apply there. If James is experiencing that, then I don't want to go there. We've seen this. I've been brought in to provide culturally responsive education to management in the medical facilities in those towns. We've seen it in fast food restaurants. You would think that maybe it varies in level of discrimination. It does to some extent, but I think in some of these places like hospitals where they're receiving it, they have such high turnover rate, they don't care who's reporting, and that person is let go and they move on. So those are just some of the reasons why they're afraid to apply, but once they do apply, they face it pretty much every day as well. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, no, it does. And just another follow-up, and pardon to the panelists, but this is such a important topic. So are these communities just basically by default, they're only really close, opportunities where they could find employment? Or I mean, can they branch out further, or is it just because of their locations? These areas are really they're only places where they can find employment.
Again, I can't speak for all of the tribal communities, but the closest towns outside of some of the tribal communities that I lived in, were 30 minutes away. So if you already have transportation issues, which is why I mentioned there was a career placement project that we started in one of the communities, and we went through the chambers and we worked with a good bit of the employers, and they signed on to support paying a certain fee into a public transportation. So a van that would then go from the tribal communities, picking folks up and bringing them into the town. So that's why I brought up equality versus equity in this process, because so many times we'll say, well, there's equality because that job is available for you to apply. You have the same access. Equity meets those individuals where they're at, provides a level footing for our individuals who are an hour away, 30 minutes away without transportation. If they don't have childcare, which we often lack for our students, and if the places employments are not flexible with childcare needs, calling off, different time coming into work and leaving work, then they face that sort of discrimination as well.
I
Okay.
could add, though,
Go ahead,
that I
Carrie.
think so in tribal communities, the number one employer, or the top three employers generally are the tribe, the tribal college, and the federal government. So the federal agencies that are on or near the reservation. So most of tribal college students, for example, even before they graduate, may already have a job working for the tribe in some of its auxiliary industries. So their first preference is to stay within the tribal community and, work for the tribe, or, like I said, the tribal college or the federal government. But that is very limiting in the kinds of professions that they can seek, and doesn't help with that overall goal of nation building. So it's when they go off the reservation or to towns near the reservation that they have that, that they just don't even seek employment, or if they do, they have challenges.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and James, if I
Okay.
could add just
Please,
another
please.
sentence there too. For communities that are grantees from OIE that are in rural settings or suburban settings, I think the challenge still remains. Certainly, we have grantees that are in remote settings and rural settings, but I think the challenge is greater in our urban and suburban areas where there's a lot of mixture of non-native and native populations, and we want to make sure that LEAs are aware that the ISDEAA is a real requirement, and we want to provide as much technical assistance to make sure that there is Indian hiring preference followed in any one of our grant opportunities, including the contracts that come from these grants too. So I think that there's a lot to be said and a lot to learn in terms of the practices that rural grantees have and how we can try to get those practices over to our urban and suburban grantees as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Julian, for adding that. Just as a follow-up to you, Julian, now, is there any sort of monitoring process that follows thereafter with these grantees, or how does that work? Yeah,
that's a great question. So we do have monitoring based off of a certain selection criteria. Most of it's driven by risk. So if anything, as we identify grantees to monitor, we look at a whole slew of indicators. So, our one of those indicators being how our grantees being responsive to tribal consultation. How are they set up their Indian parent committees? How are they making sure that the grants are meeting the responsibilities that are outlined in each of the year-to-year applications? And if anything, one of the things that we could start doing is really kind of taking a closer look at making sure ISDEAA is one of those areas to make sure that we're not foregoing or we don't accidentally look over and gloss over in the process. Monitoring is a hefty process. And I think if anything, one of the exciting opportunities we have here is to make sure that employment should, in preference by statute, go toward Indian persons. And I think that's, again, one of the greatest benefits here is making sure that we're surrounding our Native children with Native professionals.
thank you, Julian.
Can I add something? Or
Yeah, please, Carrie, go ahead.
I think, and I think most people don't know that. I think most tribal college students, people in the workforce, maybe even people who have the grants don't realize that. It's confusing. The Indian preference is sometimes confusing, especially when, you have that statement that says that you can't discriminate based on, whatever. So then they think, well, we can't do Indian preference. So the tribes can, and I think that's like tribal college students understand that there is Indian preference with the tribe and the tribal college, which that's another reason they seek those jobs, but they don't realize that it applies beyond, that sometimes it applies beyond those two entities.
Thank you for that comment, Carrie. So just as a follow-up to that, then, I mean, how do you generally go about sort of disseminating information to tribal members, tribal students, that there are these certain preferences out there for them, or or vice versa for those, the companies involved? I mean, how is that information? I guess the question is, how is that information disseminated, or how can we get that information out there?
Well, at tribal colleges, well, and I think probably other institutions, I'm not sure about the high schools, but at tribal colleges, they have career counselors. So, making sure that career counselors fully understand these laws. I think that's really important. I think workshops like this are an excellent opportunity, and I think all of us could work more closely together to get that information out to Indian country. So we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Julian, it looked like you wanted to say something too. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, you read my face well here. Just really echoing Carrie, I think this should be a continued topic, and we break it down in the most plain language possible to help kind of those employers who want to do right by these programs, who maybe don't know the exact language to use in their announcements, in the way they hire, in the way they interview. I think there's a lot of opportunity here to capitalize on just giving out the basics and really kind of addressing a lot of the ambiguity around this work. And quite honestly, people are pretty sensitive about it because most employers place us in a racial category. Native sovereignty is more than just a race. It's a trust responsibility that the federal government has to each of the sovereign nations. So I think, there's a lot of context to also weave into this as well, but it shouldn't be something that people run away from. It should be something that we all gravitate towards.
Thank you, Julian. To our audience, I encourage you to submit questions. I don't think we've seen anything in our question and answer panel yet, but please take advantage of this unique opportunity today to present your questions to our esteemed panelists here. I invite you all to do that. And we'll circle back, but I did want to also sort of pose one of the questions that we had prepared in advance to give you all a chance to respond to that. And the first question actually it begins with a premise or a statement followed by the actual question itself. And it goes like this: okay? Good education leads to good jobs. In your opinion, how true is this statement for Native Americans and Alaska Natives? Carrie, if you don't mind, I'd like to begin with you for this first question. And I can repeat it too. You might have been doing something.
No, I was listening. So good education leads to good jobs. I would say good education is essential for a good job, a job that pays a living wage that allows, as Chair Burrows said, individuals to thrive and prosper. So education is absolutely critical throughout the whole process, from the K-12 system to seamless pathways to higher education. And so what tribal colleges do is to work to make sure a good education is accessible for as many students as possible. So it's not just a good education, it has to be accessible, it has to be affordable, and tribal colleges have among the lowest tuition rates in the country. They often, Erica was talking about the need for childcare. Tribal colleges often provide childcare free for their students. And they've used, particularly during this time of COVID, used a lot of their COVID relief funding to provide either free or reduced tuition. So the average tuition for a 4-year degree at a tribal college is about a little over $3,000 a year right now. So it's the best bargain in the country. But it doesn't necessarily guarantee a good job. In a lot of cases it does, but in some cases it doesn't. So we have a much larger initiative on this. One thing tribal colleges are doing is, not just focusing on workforce development or the kind of careers that we were talking about earlier, but also job creation. Because really, to address a lot of the challenges we face, we need new jobs, new economies on our reservations and within our communities, because of the sovereignty that Director Guerrero mentioned or was talking about. So, we can either create the jobs ourselves and be nation builders, which is what tribal colleges are, but there are students and other Native people who want to work in the local community, who need to because of the hospitals and the resources who are there. So I think we all need to work, as we talked earlier, together to make sure that for our Native students, good education leads to a good job, because it doesn't entirely now.
Thank you, Carrie. And before I hand it over to the other panelists, can I just ask a follow-up question? You talked about job creation, and maybe this is an obvious response, but I mean, what are some of the challenges to job creation, on tribal lands or reservations?
Well, one example I'll just give you. There is, I won't name the community or the area, the region, but there are regions of this country where there is a lot of economic development and industry, where there's a lot of industry, say the paper industry or high tech, different industries, but there aren't relationships between those industries and the tribes or the tribal college. So the tribal college tries to bridge those relationships. But I think the biggest challenge to job creation is that the resources we need, the access to the industries, to the professionals, to the research that exists out there, it's not available on tribal lands unless we go out and try to seek it and build those bridges.
And is it hard to get those inroads or make those relationships with those industries?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's changing a lot. I think a lot of the policies of this administration have created more opportunity. And when I say industry, we look at industry broadly. So it's not just private sector, but also the federal government. So federal industries, new partnerships. So I think, it's getting better, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you. Erica, if you don't mind, I'd like to get your thoughts on the statement, good education leads to good jobs. Your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone could say it better than Carrie just did, but yeah, I just think the point there is that equitable access to an education should create pathways to career placement. But there's so many nuances, obviously what we're discussing now, as to what prevents that from happening. So hopefully these conversations will lead to the reduction of those obstacles from the education to the career.
Thank you, Erica. Julian, please, love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, happy to. And again, echoing Carrie here, and I too would qualify the word good. I think good comes with a lot of things that need to be met, and whether that be, and again, I'm thinking largely in like the K-12 context, because that's the majority of our grants that we give out in Office of Indian Ed is K-12. But what good could mean, which good probably should mean in many areas, is that it's culturally responsive education. It's a meaningful education to the affiliations of a Native child. So, to use myself as an example, I'm Comanche and Kiowa, albeit it would be nice to know Cherokee history and knowledge as well. I mean, I think it would be much more meaningful for me to get connected with Comanche and Kiowa knowledge and tradition and teachings, as well as Native language. Good also means exposing Native children to Native languages, probably their own Native languages of their choosing as well. And I think last but not least is treaty knowledge. What the word good means is letting every Native child know that treaties are still real. They are not of the past. They are still law of the land. And as they apply to the various tribes who have them, I think this is one of the key ingredients that we have to use to really make, and go back to what you just said, good education leads to good jobs. Good, all of what I just mentioned leads to good jobs. Because again, echoing Carrie, that Native child then realizes that they have a responsibility as a nation builder to build cities and nations of Native aspiration. And I think that's one of the exciting things that we do when we work in education. We build futures.
Thank you, Julian. If I can ask a follow-up, you had mentioned about treaty knowledge. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that, and how we could get access so we can inform ourselves of the treaties?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually most folks say, well, where can I go in terms of just like the website that tells me everything I need to know? There are a handful of websites out there. I'll try to pull up one of the largest databases. There's a national treaty database out of the Oklahoma State University system. And if anything, the USDA really funds that work. And it's really exciting key work, but particular to the education realm, there are around 190 treaties that have education provisions in them. Treaties were written a long time ago, but also in the same side of that coin, they're not that long ago, but there are promises that were made. There are guarantees that were signed to by the United States government that provided education work, whether that be schools or teachers or services. I think the big thing remains that, as Native children are exposed to their language, what treaty knowledge would mean is that, how many treaties are they responsible holding the US government accountable to? I think that's important. So just to kind of put it in simpler terms, again, I'm Comanche and Kiowa, and how many treaties did the United States engage with Comanche people? How many? What is that number? When were they written? When were they signed? What do they say? These are critical questions that should, lead to answers for our Native children so that they, again, have something that they can steward and know that they have the greatest responsibility on behalf of the ancestors to hold the country accountable to.
Thank you, Julian. Actually, I'd like to stick with you for the next question. Obviously, we know that you're employed with the federal government now. Just curious, how did you find your way into the federal government? We would love to hear your story about that.
Oh, yeah, happy to. I would say it was by stroke of luck, but there's very little luck. There's no coincidence. There's only making sure you give yourself to the natural gravity of life. I started in Indian Ed as a grantee within my own office. I was exposed to the OIE as a Native Youth Community Project Director, and through the nonprofit sector is when I first started. And as an employee with the Tribal Education Department's National Assembly, or TEDNA, which is a small Native nonprofit. And when I first started there, my biggest dream was just to make sure that every tribe could have a Department of Education. And that really morphed into a lot of other good work, where I then got exposed to a lot of state partners in Oklahoma and tribal partners throughout the state of Oklahoma. And one thing led to another, to where, I just got exposed to so many partners that the state picked me up as a state employee. And that's when I began my government level work. And one of the nice bits of advice my former mentor had shared with me, Quentin Romanos is a former mentor of mine, and he told me, he said, "Julian, you're a maverick. You got born in the nonprofits, and government is boring. Government is bureaucratic, and it takes time, and it's going to hold you back." And I understood what he meant by that. But at the same time, I think government needs a lot of energy. Government needs a lot of goodwill, and making sure that life is breathed into all of our projects and work. And I did a lot of my work at the state level with the State Department of Education in Oklahoma. And that led to this role at the federal level with the Office of Indian Education. And it's just been an incredible journey ever since. So every day is something new in the work that I do, but I've really kind of just left myself open to opportunities and let gravity choose where I go.
Thank you, Julian. I do see a question in chat, but before I get to that, I'd like to ask Carrie to tell us about, I believe you used to work on a Hill, right? I think we'd like to hear how you found that opportunity in the past, and maybe some tips to the students here today on how you were able to make that happen.
Yeah, I went to law school, number one.
Yeah.
That was pretty helpful. I majored in journalism as an undergrad, which I also felt was helpful. But I think, as Julian was saying, I had mentors often who did not look like me because there were none. I went to, probably like many of us here, went to school and never once had a native teacher ever. And so hopefully we're changing that now, and I know we are. But so you have to, rely on who's available, I guess, to be mentors, and that was really important. So having good mentors who would encourage us to continuing moving down the path. But I worked for a law firm that was working for the Navajo tribe, actually, in a lawsuit, and just got interested in being on Capitol Hill. And I was reading laws, and they were also what I thought was badly written. So I thought, I'm going to go work on Capitol Hill and fix those laws. So then I found out they're written vague for a reason. But it's been great. And I think, one of the things related to what Julian was saying, I wanted to say about tribal colleges is, they have a lot of internships and apprenticeship programs to help students get their foot in the door. But we really have to very consciously match up the degree programs with the knowledge and skills that even for federal employment, because it's very, really picky at the federal level. So you have to make sure. So that requires a lot of coordination between the institutions and the employers.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much. I do have a question. Actually, we have a couple of questions here in the chat, and I'd like to get to them. Let me see. The first question is there a central bank where we can send our job openings to make Native Americans aware that we have openings? Any of you like to respond to that question?
Well, for tribal colleges, we have the Tribal College Journal, which is a publication of AHECS that they publish 4 times a year. Oh, but they have it online. So it's really the online resource that's the best. And they have a job bank that a lot of our students and people in Indian country access. So I always urge people to post jobs on the Tribal College Journal online website. But we're actually, AHEC is working with OPM to, I noticed someone posted the USA Jobs site. We're actually working, or OPM has assembled a working group of Native individuals to try to make that website and at least the information about employment opportunities for Native youth in particular, easier for them to understand. Like to let them know where there's Native preference within the federal government and how to apply, because it is kind of cumbersome now. So I think OPM's still working on that. If they haven't released that information, they probably will soon.
Thank you, Carrie. Did anyone else have any comments in response to that question about the central bank for openings? Or
respond not just about the central bank, but often this question was being put in the chat around like, how do we connect? Relationship building is huge. I think Carrie mentioned this in one of the first discussions. So I just say in this respect, sort of reflection on how your department is engaging with tribal communities. Have you ever been to a tribal community? Do you go there to build the relationships with the departments? Also, some will complain, well, you said to reach out to this person and I did, but I haven't heard back. And relationship building is not just one phone call, it's not just one email, it's not just one visit, especially when we have a historical context of lack of trust, and so and for valid reasons. And so building that relationship before going for a grant, that you need to sort of hire and place a specific subset of individuals in that grant position, creating the relationships, finding out what interests the community members in which you're targeting, and build from there. So yes, there's always places we can just link our jobs, but the relationship is really important. And there are many departments that do build the relationships with the tribal colleges, AHAC, and we see success in those areas. But if it is just another line to kind of cross off, that's when we see that there really aren't authentic relationships there for sharing of the knowledge of job openings. But I also want to say, oftentimes if they're federal jobs outside of the tribal communities, are they offering relocation expenses, housing, and childcare, and all of these things that are going to really keep our students from leaving their own community. Many of us don't want to leave our own community, but if we decide that leaving the community to obtain this experience and bring it back to the tribal community, we still need to see that sort of the relationship and understanding that creates those, those support services, I guess, when obtaining those, like the childcare and the relocation expenses. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. Unless Julian wanted to say anything more along these lines, I can get to our next question here.
No, both Eric and Carrie covered it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next question, what do you believe are the best avenues to bring awareness to the general public regarding these issues?
Well, we'll let Julian answer that one.
I think it goes back to some of the earlier commentary on maybe making sure we have a webinar that comes from OIE, just let folks know about ISDEA requirements on all of our grants. And that's within the kind of locus of control for the OIE population. But I think bigger than that, I think we just need to continue having this specific dialogue, like making sure that this webinar stays continued, or, how we make that more engaging, how we get more folks to attend, making sure it's recorded and accessible. I think those are just a few things that immediately come to mind.
Thank you, Julian. Carrie or Erica, did you want to add anything to what Julian said?
And the question was about making.
Yeah, what do you believe are the best avenues to bring awareness to the general public regarding these issues?
Yeah, no, I think Julian summarized it well, but I will say that as far as I can remember, this is the first time that the EEOC has reached out to us, to AHAC, to do a webinar that's focused on tribal college students, or just to get information out. EEOC in the past may have done that individually or locally, but I don't remember anyone coming to us as an organization tribal college wide. So I just want to say we really appreciate this opportunity to begin this dialogue. And I think, as Chair Burrows said, civil rights remains our nation's unfinished business. And as long as it is unfinished, we have more work that we can do together. So continuing these dialogues and discovering, listening to the students, figuring out and Native people who are in the workforce, and working together to come up with solutions to address them. I think that's what we have to do. And I am confident that we can do that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think it's great that we have this opportunity to talk with AHAC today. And it's long overdue, but I mean, I think this is a great conversation and a great opportunity for us. Next question. Let me see. With the footprint of Native Americans covering literally every inch of America, where is the most critical need as far as education and employment? Also, is there a region where there has been the most improvement?
I'm not exactly sure what that means if they're talking about just education in general, but we know that there are education challenges that Native youth in particular face just throughout the education perspective. And tribal colleges, as I said earlier, are place-based institutions. They're located predominantly on federally recognized Indian reservations or near reservations. But we found during the pandemic, the tribal colleges went online almost immediately within 2 weeks of the pandemic starting. And those of the tribal colleges that could get the word out about their online education opportunities saw dramatic increases in enrollment. We have one tribal college, Tohono Community College, that went from serving one tribal nation, the O'odham Nation, to serving students from over 60 different Indian tribes. Tribal colleges, some of them, their enrollment doubled or tripled. And these were mostly urban Native people who were signing up to attend tribal. They had this hunger for tribal culturally based education. So that indicates to us there is a tremendous need among particular adults, Native people in urban areas for tribally based education.
Thank you, Carrie. Julian, I saw you nodding your head quite a bit. Did you want to add something as well, please?
Thanks, James. Yeah, I think Carrie really hit it right on the head. I too also grew up in K-12 without a Native teacher. That's a shame. We have to change that. I too grew up without my native language in school. That cannot happen into the future. I too, needed champions in my school and my state to champion better pathways for me as a Native child. That didn't happen. So I just got lucky. I had two great parents who grew up from poverty-stricken backgrounds who did not want that life for their children. So we have incredible amounts of work to do. I think the greatest needs is making sure we recruit and retain Native educators, that we give every child choice, that we, help their college and career readiness pathway and journey into all sectors of life, whether it be private, public, tribal, and then making sure they're exposed to their native language, and that each of the system partners work together to make this happen. I argue it's possible. So that's what I have to add there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Julian. Eric, I'd love to give you a chance to weigh in if you like.
Yeah, I support everything that Julian and Carrie said. I think on a more philosophical way, I think we see a great bit of our history or just even our existence is often forgotten. But then on the other side of that, there's active erasure, right? And so I know that someone just mentioned in the chat, there are states that are actively removing our history and culture from the curriculum. So we have some where we're just not acknowledged. I just attended an event that was supposed to support TCUs and HBCUs and HSIs, and they had a panel for alum and current students from all of those types of institutions and no tribal college students or alum. And so we're either just forgotten, and that can feel for many of our students, I've heard this so often, like I'm sitting in a classroom, like we're on my ancestral lands, and I'm treated as if like our people don't exist or we're no longer here. And then on the other side of that is there's the active erasure as well. So I think we all should always be learning about what's happening and what we can do to support or to help within education and for all of our students. So I think what we all should be doing, and I think that question specifically, like how can we bring awareness? I think we are doing that with this discussion, but I think as people living here on Indigenous land, we should acknowledge, all of us, that we should actively be doing our part to learn more and not just rely on these types of discussions, but what are we doing to educate ourselves as well? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Erica. Self-education, learning is so important. Next question from our audience. As states work to make a commitment to the First Peoples of this country, could there be Indian preference in admittance to higher educational graduate programs, particularly in relation to state-funded colleges? Do any colleges actually practice this already?
Yes, several do. So tribal colleges have, as I was mentioning, some have free or reduced tuition now. And then Haskell and SIPI have no tuition. Those are federal entities. So they charge no tuition, just small fees for their students. And they're actually primarily residential facilities, but are institutions of higher education. And then, but several states do also. They have for Native students who are primarily from their state, or whose tribes have ties to their state. So they also provide free or reduced tuition. We'll see how that should survive. The Supreme Court's dealing with the issue of race in consideration of enrollment. And as Julian explained, tribal college tribes, the distinction for federally recognized Indian tribes is not race-based at all. It's a political distinction based on treaties, the federal trust responsibility, and the exchange of over 1 billion acres of land. So that should still stand, but that does exist. It's not every institution, but several.
Thank you, Carrie. I'll move on to the next question unless anybody wanted to add anything more to that. Okay. Next question is, how open culturally is the Indigenous population to accepting allies from other special emphasis groups?
I'm happy to take a stab at that one first, real quick. Yeah, how open? It's as open, as authentic as a person comes into the space, right? Like I before this role, I was serving at the state level, and as a state employee, when I wanted to go after partnerships with tribes, it's one thing to just show up because you need them to sign something, and it's another thing to show up to say, what can I do as a better institution to help? Not that I'm trying to extract something from the community, but I'm trying to give something. I'm trying to address a gap. I'm trying to really be in a space where we're meeting the need. And I don't know what that is. And I'm if you're willing to let me be in the space, I'm happy to be a part of the solution, where whatever that may be for that community. And I think that's what often goes awry in a lot of this, is that, again, there's nothing going to stop the nature of grant making. Grants will always exist. So there's always going to be like a time sensitivity nature to things. But it really makes it hard when you go to a tribal community and you're saying, I know this is the first time you met me, but I want you to sign this, and we can get the money based off of your community and your needs on these things. So like, again, they'll be open as long as you're authentic and meaningful and intentional with your outreach.
Thank you, Julian. Carrie or Erica, would you like to weigh in or add any more to what Julian had said?
I think that was perfect. I wrote it down. It was so good. I'm going to use it. Be authentic.
Thank you so much. Well, to the audience, I still encourage you to ask more questions. We are running close to the end of our panel. So let me just ask a question that we had prepared to our panelists. And it's a two-part question. So we have students from TCUs and we have educators from TCUs in our audience. So my question to you all is, there's two parts. The first part is there anything you would like to say to those who educate tribal students at the TCUs? And then what is your message to the tribal students about their education or their efforts to further their careers and employment opportunities? If there's no volunteers, I can pick on one of you to respond first, but that's our next question, please.
Well, I think I could say to the students, and this is one thing I say to them all the time, really take advantage of the scholarship opportunities, the internship opportunities, anything you can to add to make your education journey easier and to add more depth and richness to that experience. So, take the chance to become engaged in the student government. I think Erica was talking about some of the challenges at mainstream, what we call mainstream institutions or larger institutions. But, a lot of those institutions have a number of clubs and organizations and they're looking for more members. So you can really have a voice and make a difference if you get engaged in those kinds of activities, especially leadership activities on campus. And there's a lot of scholarship opportunities out there, so take advantage of them. I know a lot of students, there's other things to help, like if you want to go to law school, there's the American Indian Law Center that's part of the University of New Mexico Law Center that provides a summer program for students. And, there's just a lot of resources out there, so take advantage of them and take a risk. It's definitely worth it.
Thank you. Erica or Julian, would you like to share your message to the educators and students today?
I guess the students are the easiest. So I'm going to say, if you're a student or if you're thinking of being a student or getting ready to graduate, I'm proud of you. Keep going. And as Carrie said, always ask questions, always find out the resources available for you. There's always a way. And AHAC is a support and the TCUs are a support, so always reach out if needed. I think I need a little bit of clarity on the educator. What was the first part of that question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll repeat it. Is there anything you'd like to say to those who educate tribal students at the TCUs?
Hahong, thank you for giving your time to our students, for sure. We support you as well because our faculty are just as important to the success of our tribal colleges. And as an educator, just always, and I know Julian's mentioned culturally responsive education. So empower your students to have those high expectations, but provide the resources and support they need throughout their educational journey to aspire for that and meet your students where you're at, get to know them, and have a space and a learning that's safe and comfortable for our students to be successful. And again, thank you for being a faculty member at our TCUs.
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiments from both my colleagues, and a message to both staff and students that I can think of is what I typically try to say during kind of graduation like ceremonies if I'm ever giving a keynote, and it's somewhere along the lines of, don't you dare compromise yourself. Don't you dare compromise your values, dreams, hopes, and desires. I think there's so much incorporated in the seen and unseen commitment to tribal sovereignty. And that's at the heart of this work. That's why we're gathered. That's why this topic is what it is. And I think if anything, like, our students are definitely going to be those champions. Our educators are helping them get there. And we're going to do it. So I think if anything, it's just trying to help think about how we all collectively champion together as a community.
Thank you so much, Julian. And to all our panels, thank you so much again today. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Erica. Thank you again, Julian. I think what we've talked about today is so important, so valuable. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our audience has learned so much today as well. And I hope we can do this again. It's been a pleasure to hear from all of you. So thank you. Next, we have a couple of representatives from the Society of American Indian Government Employees, or SAGE. It's our pleasure to have both Frederica Joseph, the chair, and also Joanne Brandt, the director of the youth programs. So happy that you're here joining us today. Frederica, please tell us more about your role of SAGE and what SAGE does. You're on mute, by the way.
I want to thank you very much for including us to invite us to today's event. And I know Joanne is excited to talk about the youth student program that SAGE has. SAGE was formed back in 2000. We found out that there was really no outlet for a large affinity group for American Indians, Alaska Natives throughout the federal government. And so to fill that void, we started out with SAGE, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And it's been a member of NCEPS, which is the National Coalition for National Coalition for Equity and Public Service, since 2005. This NCEPS group is comprised of all the presidents of all the large affinity organizations, which include FEW, BIG, FAPAC, and SAGE. And so the presidents meet on a quarterly basis. We talk about issues that we collaborate on. A long time ago, we did one on mascots. We've done one on gun control and issues arising in the Asian community. So we all collaborate together on a quarterly basis and talk about these issues. And people say, can I join this organization? Well, you kind of are if you are a member of that organization. Your president represents you at those meetings. So we're really excited to be a partner with them. Our mission is to increase the representation of American Indians and Alaska Natives in the federal workplace, and to educate government employees on federal trust responsibility and provide a national forum on issues affecting American Indians and Alaska Native government employees. We are not political. We're not a union. If you file a complaint, we can't really do much for you in terms of following that complaint through the system with you. We're an affinity group for all government employees. And you don't have to be American Indian or Alaska Native. Oh, I'm doing something here.
We can still hear you fine. Your audio is still coming in clearly.
You don't have to be American Indian or Alaska Native to join SAGE. You just have to believe to support our mission moving forward. SAGE is an organization for not only American Indian federal employees, but also for state and tribal employees, as well as contractors. We've added those to our list of people as well. We have an excellent way of, we have our national training every year, and this is kind of an excellent vehicle for networking and learning about issues that affect American Indians and Alaska Natives, employees and Indian country. Last year, we celebrated our 20th anniversary. Of course, we did it through virtual learning. For the last couple of years, we've been virtual. And then this year, we're so excited we're going to be on location at the River Spirit in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's owned and operated by the Muskogee Creek Nation. We always go to these different tribal resorts because we want to bring our the employees in for exposure to tribes and tribes within that area as well. And they also support us by, cultural events and different things that really help SAGE out. So we'll be doing this in June 20th through the 22nd this year. And when we stay at these different places, we always make sure that they have government per diem rates. It's important, especially since the government is being involved, and we want to make sure that you get the best rates possible for staying there as you're being trained. Our training has been supported and highlighted as one of the top government training conferences by GovLoop. I don't know if very many people have heard of GovLoop, but it is a social media group, and they've supported us throughout many years in terms of our conference. I've heard people when they're at SAGE say, well, gee, this is the first place I've been, I felt comfortable, and we're a very friendly group. We make sure we speak to everybody and make you feel at home. We've also heard feedback from our attendees that they just felt that all the training was excellent, that there was no fluff in our training, that you got the best possible speakers and presenters. And so we have several different tracks for our training. One is professional development. The other one is EEO diversity training. We have natural resources, cultural and STEM. And we also have federal Indian law and policy that we host as well. The NTP also, which is the National Training Program, also has a youth component as well as our Warrior Society. The Warrior Society was started by our past president, Danny Garceau, who retired as an E9 in the National Guard. And he saw this void and felt it was very important to have something for our warriors. And so we started the program back in 2014 when I first came on board as president. And we got it, we kicked it off, and he's always brought in excellent speakers that address benefits that are pertinent to our warriors and our veterans, as well as he usually sets up tables around the room that people during the break can go and gather information from these different agencies and organizations that provide information to them. We open it up on Thursday for the local community to come in to be a part of our training. We also serve lunch, and we have our youth come in and join us for lunch to be around the veterans. We think that's really important because in our communities, we have high respect for warriors. And so we always highlight them at gatherings and whatnot. And so we want to make sure we keep that going as we move along within our respect for our communities and those that live in those communities. And of course, there's always the youth program that Joanne will talk about in a few minutes. And she's been the director. What happened was at our first training conference, it was held in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And Cheryl Zwang, who is one of our past chairs, had attended with her daughter. Her daughter was a teenager. And so when we finished up everything, that we were so small, we had like 75 people there. So we were able to actually kind of talk about our training with everyone in the room. And we got feedback, and her feedback was, why don't you guys have something like this for our youth? I've been here all week with my mom. I've enjoyed the training, but it would have been nice to have a youth component that would address things for youth, for me, for people like myself. Rafael De Leon was there in the audience from EPA, as well as Joanne. And he stood up and he said, we'll put some money towards this program. And he challenged other organizations and agencies to do the same. And he basically gifted Joanne to us. She's been a great gift ever since. And she started this program and built it up from the ground up. And we're so proud of the program. We're so proud of all the work she's done. She's kept in contact with the majority of her youth groups that have gone forward, watching them develop and grow. And they have families now, and they've got careers. And Julian is one of those that went to SAGE. He was on the last panel. And so he's going to do a talk with us for our plenary session at SAGE this year about what SAGE did for him. And so we're looking forward to hearing from him as well. We would like to give those opportunities to our youth to give back to other students and to learn and network together. So we help to promote your organization. I always tell people that I feel like SAGE is like a eharmony.com, but we connect professional dots, not the other dots, but the professional dots, so that we can help as a resource to provide information to you for any kind of recruitment or mentorships or outreach, whatever it might be, so that we can help you in your efforts to diverse and be inclusive within your organizations. And during this training and during the week, we provide a room on Monday. If any agency wants to have an agency forum, they can come in and meet for the day, go over all their work plans or any type of things that they want to talk about in terms of their increasing of their numbers. And so we have one agency already on board that's going to do that and come in and do the training that day for them. So we're really excited. So we offer that to any agency that would like to partake of that. And you can let me know if you're interested, and we can make that happen for you. We put some vehicles together for you to help you and our partners connect with our membership. And throughout the entire year, we do email blasts through our listserv, which it includes our memberships. Our SAGE website, which is www.sage.org. Our Talking Leaf newsletter that comes out 3 times during the year. Our Facebook page and any other social media that we have that's out there. So you can support SAGE by promoting the membership and attendance at our national training program. Because American Indians and Alaska Natives are so underrepresented in the government workforce, especially at those senior leadership levels of where we really need people to be. Also, the nonprofits for American Indian and Alaska Native is also very underrepresented and underfunded compared to other affinity groups and organizations. We are an all-volunteer board. I have the board of directors stretched from the East Coast to the West Coast and in between. I always get raises of an extra 0 in my paycheck every year. So I'm making 5 or 6 zeros across the board. I'm doing really well. And so we do the best we can as volunteers, and we still have people who are actually still working a day job like Joanne and doing SAGE on the side. I did that for many years till I retired 5 years ago. And now I do 40 hours of nothing but SAGE instead of 40 hours on each job, and trying to do each job as well as I could. We have MOUs with several organizations. We did have one with the EOC at one time. I don't know what happened to it, but we probably need to have a conversation about that again very soon and see what we can do to get that MOU in place again. I am also a very proud mommy of a Haskell graduate. My daughter attended Haskell and graduated with a emphasis in business administration. And I can tell you that on Wednesdays for our event, we have career days. And so she happened to go to the gym, I guess is where they were having a career fair, and happened upon the Army. She said if she didn't go see the Army, because we were an Army family, she said her father probably would never have forgiven her. So she went over to talk to them. And that year they were doing a fellows program, and she was selected for that fellows program. And what it did was it brought her into the federal government as GS7. They sent her to Texarkana, where she received she didn't receive it, she had to work for it. And then she received it, her master's degree that they paid for. And she had a commitment of 5 years to pay that back. I think it was a $60,000 thing. So she's continued to stay with the DOD, Department of Defense, and worked with them, and done very well, as far as her grades and things of that nature. But she always looks back at that tribal college time frame, and looks at it very respectfully, and she's very committed to the work that Haskell has done in the education field. And so we really do support the tribal colleges, even within SAGE and my family, because I have other family members that have attended SAGE, attended Haskell. So I understand when the other panel was talking about that education, how important it is. I grew up on BIA reservations in BIA schools, and not once did I have any type of training in the tribal commitments or history that was happening in that state. I lived in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, and never once touched on the history. Well, if they did like half a page. That was it. So that's a sad commentary for education in terms of educating our children and making sure they get what they need in schools. And it always makes you feel like, you are invisible, you're forgotten. And we find that to be true a lot of times when we talk to these different agencies, and they have 0.01% Native Americans and like 100,000 people working for their agencies. That's pretty sad, because you're not diverse and you're not inclusive. You can't even call yourself that as an agency, as far as I'm concerned. So we try to work with those agencies to see what can we do better? What can we help you do? So we're really excited that we have a youth component, because we always hope that the agencies will come recruit for them at SAGE. And in the past, Joanne has been really helpful and resourceful in going out and searching for students for agencies who have a certain discipline they're looking for, and she'll help them with that ticket item. So I'll quit talking so that she can talk and tell you more about the student program, because that's what is really important, is our youth. And that's what brings people to SAGE, because they want to hopefully recruit and meet students, whether it's for internships or for employment or even future employment. So Joanne, if you want to, I don't know, James, maybe you might want to introduce her. It's
Oh,
up to
yeah,
you.
no, thank you so much, Frederica, for all that information. Yeah, no, next, Joanne Brandt, Director of Youth Programs. Please tell us more about your role in leading that. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm Joanne Brandt, and I'm from the Oneida Nation, and I'm from the Bear Clan, and I've been working at EPA now for over 20 years. And so, and the program that I've been doing at EPA is working with Native students. That's what I was hired for initially, and so I've been doing it all along. And so, my interest in working with SAGE came about with, like she said, Raphael DeLeon, who put money towards the students, and he's still doing that. We just recently signed an MOU with AHAC and working with Carrie Billy, working with the students and doing webinars with them and hopefully more. But I thought the panel was excellent.
Yes.
I really gave me insight that I didn't know or think about. And I thought it was a great panel and I appreciate it. And yes, Julian was one of our SAGE students that came to SAGE and at a very young age. And it's nice to see how he progressed to where he is now when our SAGE alumni do that. So what is SAGE about? Well, what we do is we provide scholarships for students to come. We will pay for their airfare, their hotel, and their accommodations. We feed them. And so there's an opportunity that any Native student can apply, and then they fill out an application online, and then we review them. And with those applications, I look at students who normally wouldn't have that opportunity to travel. So a lot of the students that we pick up are students who've never been on a plane before, who have been in very isolated areas, and they come to SAGE. And that's the type of student that we look and try to provide an opportunity for them. So they come to SAGE and they start on Sunday. We fly them in on Sunday, or if they're in the area on Sunday, and we have a reception for them. And then we have those who are sponsors for SAGE come to the reception, and they have the opportunity to talk to the students and meet with the students. Then on Monday is when their workshops start. And they have workshops just for them, and it's all day on Monday. And then on Tuesday, they go to the plenary session, which is in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they have workshops as well, and 2 to Wednesday, and then they leave on Thursday. So it gives them a great opportunity. I find that the students, we're not a large group. We're not like Unity. We're not like ACES. We don't have a lot of students, a real lot of students, but they bond together and they meet people from other areas, maybe someone of the same interests. And then with the federal agencies coming, they get to talk one-on-one with a lot of federal agencies. I had one student the FBI was there, and he wanted to become an FBI agent, and that agent walked him through right to the end. So that was the kind of things that we like. We like to have that opportunities for the students to see that there are opportunities, to be very positive, to encourage them to finish their college education. I work with them. I provide any kind of guidance that they're looking for. And I can think of an example of one is this one student came and he was very shy, didn't know anyone. And so I could see that in the group. And I always do see that in the group because I've done so many of them. And I encouraged him. I had the leaders work with him. And then he kind of came to another one, and then he contacted me and he said, well, I'm finished my college and I think I want to be a pharmacist. And so him and I talked about it. We talked to other pharmacists, and he did his goal. He accomplished his goal. And right now he's a pharmacist in the Oklahoma area. And I met with him. He had to come for training in DC. So I met with him, and he said to me, Joanne, I want to give back to what Sage did for me. I want to give it back to the community. So can I help you? Because he knew we were going to be in Oklahoma, state of Oklahoma, Tulsa area. He said, can I help you? Can I help you with that? And I said, sure, Taylor, I would love to have that. And as that happened, I had Julian. I talked to Julian, he helped me, and he said, Joanne, I'll do what, one thing that Julian said to me there, and I don't know if he's still on, is that he said, Joanne, I'll do anything you need me to do. I don't care what it is. I will work with you. I'm taking the time off and coming to Oklahoma for the week of Sage to help you. And, you know, for what Sage has done for me. So it's always such, sometimes I think about, well, maybe I didn't, I should do more. But when I listen to the students, I know that they got a lot out of Sage. It gives them opportunities that they normally wouldn't have. So I really am proud of Sage and what Sage offers to the students, and look forward, because I really miss the students, because we were for 2 years not able to see them, and it's just not the same. So I look so forward to in June to be with those students, to hug them, and to be able to talk to them. And it's a great conference for them, and they really get to see what the government's all about. If you're a federal agency, you need to come, because you'll be able to do one-on-one with the students while you're there. So we do have, I don't know if it's, maybe I can put it on there, but I do have an application link that if you know any students who want to go, they can go to the link, and the application is online. Do you have any
Joanne?
questions?
Yeah, if I can ask Bob, is the application link that you're talking about, is that to the youth program, or are you referring to participation in the upcoming conference?
And it's to participate in the upcoming conference. It's an application for a scholarship. So if
Okay.
any student cannot come, don't have the money to come, and they want to come to Sage, they fill out an application, and Sage will pay for their airfare, their hotel accommodations, and we feed the students out throughout the conference, so they don't go starving at all. We provide food for them. So, Freddie, did you want to add anything?
No, I think it's a really great opportunity for our students to meet other students from across the country. And they form lifelong relationships, friendships. And I tell you, just, what they do when they're there, though, one of the really neat things that Joanne initiated was they do a skit on Thursday of things that they, showing what they learned from Sage. And those skits really help, I think, the students, because it teaches them not only time management, but they have to form a team. They have to listen to each other. They have to decide what skit they're going to do. They're going to have to practice their skit, who's going to do what. So it's a building block of, skill development for those students. And I think it's just amazing how she started that, because the skits are comical. Many of them are. But it drives home how they felt about Sage after the week. And that's why they don't want it to end. They want to continue staying with Sage. And we've had a youth advisor on our board of directors to come in and report about what's happening with our youth. And so we really highlight our youth. We're proud of our youth. We care about our youth. We've had Keith Sokola, who is a well-known Native American musician, come and work with our students. He gifted one of the people there a flute one year. We've had Don Chapman, who's now deceased, come in and work with them on music. They did a presentation about that on the night of the open mic. So, and they've also presented on an open mic. They've done poetry reading and that type of thing. They really do get involved with Sage.
Right.
The agencies, it's really good for you to come to that career fair, to come from behind your desk and say, hey, what are your goals? What would you like to do? And talk to them about that and let them know what you have available at your agency. How can we help you? Because we want you to work with us, and actually recruit for those students. And then during Wednesday, they typically will have a list of people that can talk to the students for about 10 minutes, I believe. Isn't that right, Joanne? And they can have that one-on-one discussion with the students and talk a little bit, tell more of their program. but they've got 10 minutes to get them to want to come over and talk to you when it's all over. And if not, stand out there and grab them. Say, hey, come here. I want to talk to you about something, and that's what they want. They want you to come out from behind the table and come out and recruit for them, because they're great students. We've got some fantastic students. So yeah, I think the youth program is our biggest program, is the heartbeat of our organization. And I'm so glad we have our youth. And yeah, we might be small, but I think it's better for them in learning and interacting with each other. If you had 1,000 students, you couldn't have that happen. But with the amount of students we do get in, they are able to interact with one another and grow those friendships and long-term relationships. So Joanne's done an outstanding stellar effort with that youth program, and we're so proud of it.
And
Thank you,
and
Chris.
this year, I
ahead.
just wanted to add, and this year we have EPA has come to the table to be one to sponsor our program, and so I'm really happy with that.
Yes.
In fact, I haven't even told Freddie, but there was an email blast that Raphael did to all of the SESers that they need to go to SAGE. So I think we're going to get a good turnout of EPA employees coming to SAGE, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think in response to you, James, I think what we're scheduling is for us to have our website up and ready to start registration on the 1st of April.
Okay.
For the conference, and it'll be from May 1st to May 30th. It'll be $625, which is the early bird, and then our regular price of $700 will be from May 1st to June 16th, and then starting June 19th, which is the week of our training, you'll register on site for $750. So there is tribal government employee discounts, retiree discounts, and SAGE lifetime members discounts as well. So, if you're interested, just keep watching our website, and it should be up. We're busy planning it and trying to get all the bugs out and get ready to go live so that people can start registering. And I'm working with the hotel to start getting that hotel stuff taken care of, so we can, when you register for the program, you can also register for your room. So
Okay.
hopefully we
thank
can all
you
kick that off April 1st on April Fool's Day.
One more quick follow-up, if you don't mind. So for the application process for students, is there going to be a deadline, or is that going to be?
Yeah. There's the deadline is April 1st. Depends on how many. I know there's some in there already, but I haven't looked at them. But if you even go on the SAGE website, that flyer is on the website where the link is for the applications for the students.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much again, Frederica and Joanne. Unless you wanted to say anything more, we really appreciate your time and being here with us today and telling our audience about SAGE and the various programs out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Mhm.
Yeah, now I'd like to turn it over to our director, Cheryl Mabry. She's the director of state and local tribal programs. Cheryl, if you're ready, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, James. Wow, what a great discussion today. We're so appreciative of our representatives from SAGE, as well as, of course, our panelists. This was really quite enlightening. We truly appreciate all of the information that our guests provided for us. To all of those who joined us today, it's our hope, as always, that you're taking away something from today's webinar that you didn't exactly have with you when you logged on to it. The conversations will continue in many other forums, such as some of what we heard about today. EEOC will surely continue with the conversation, especially as it relates to tribal students and making that move from school to jobs. We feel very strongly that we need to be a part of that conversation. And so we will continue to do things like what you experienced today, and look for resources and do what we can to help, because we don't want to be that partner who really is not authentic. We are deeply interested, and we want everyone to feel our authenticity, even though we are a federal agency. This is how we're wired. This is our mission. And so we want to continue to advance that. I will say that our EEOC website is really a great resource for information at eeoc.gov. You can find out more. What are my rights? What are my responsibilities as it pertains to the workplace? So that's always a good place to look. Also, you can follow us on social media as well. And then I will just plug that, if you're in the market, please consider us as a potential employer. We'd be happy to, we're in hiring mode. Don't forget us. We are a small agency, but, we are a powerful little engine that could. So please, put us in your list of potential employers to explore. But in closing, I would like to just thank all of our very dedicated EEOC staff from around the country who've actually helped to make this event possible. And then, of course, all of our incredible speakers we heard from today. We are really so grateful that you all took your very valuable time and invested it in this discussion today. It's hugely important, and we very much appreciate that. In addition, I'd like to just extend a very, very special thank you to all of those tribal students who logged in today. I know you just finished spring break last week, so it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty with classes, but also to the educators of those students. Thank you all so much for attending. And then, of course, we've had many other supporters of tribal youth who've joined us today, and really a very special thank you to you all as well. And then finally, just to our students, we really wish you the best of luck as you look to kind of finish out this semester now, as well as in all of your endeavors to come. Again, please consider us, please consider the federal government as a potential employer, and just know that we will not turn a blind eye to these issues. The EEOC is very committed to continuing to work on this, to address inequities, and to the extent that, it's within our power or within our ability to collaborate with other federal, state, or local colleagues, we will do that. So with all of that, we will sign off with a massive, massive thanks to all who participated. And I wish you all a very good rest of your day. Take care, and thank you so much.